So hello everyone, I'm Aki Nakanishi, Arlene Schnitzer Curator of Culture, Art and Education here at Poland Japanese Garden. Thank you so very much for tuning in today for this very special program, Unraveling Art of Daisuke Nakano. First off, I hope this finds you all enjoying this beautiful summer as we slowly but surely move back to life as we used to know it pre-pandemic. As for people tuning in from Japan, please know that our heart goes out to all those people who were affected by the recent storm across the country. Well, while we wait for just a couple of more minutes to just make sure everyone is logging in smoothly and getting settled in front of their PCs, I might just get the housekeeping announcements all covered, as more and more people are just logging in as we speak. This program will be recorded for later viewing and sharing among the public at large via Poland Japanese Garden's official YouTube channel. If you do already subscribe to either the channel or the Garden's e-newsletter, you will be receiving a notification as the recorded footage is actually uploaded in a couple of weeks' time. Secondly, there will be a brief segment towards the end of the program for non-anonymous Q&A, where you can ask questions to today's guest speakers using the question box at the bottom of your screen. So today we are thrilled, actually very thrilled, to be joined by close to 200 friends from many cities all over the world across many different time zones, making this a truly global program. We are just simply humbled by the power of art and culture in connecting people coming from all walks of life. And on behalf of the garden, I'd like to send a huge thank you to all of you for taking the time and care to show your support. And I guess with that, most everyone is in the virtual auditorium, right? Yeah, all set to go. So thank you so much again for joining us for another virtual program associated with the current exhibition entitled Painting Paradise, Art of Daisuke Nakano. I'm your host, Aki Nakanishi, Arlene Schnitzer Curator of Culture, Art and Education at Poland Japanese Garden. At the very top of this program, I'd like to just express our most sincere gratitude for the generous support for the exhibition by Ippodo Gallery of New York, as well as Ginza, in addition to, of course, the Standard for their continued support for the arts. And before I introduce the first speaker of the evening, though, I thought it would be kind of helpful to share this 2.5-minute video walkthrough of the actual exhibition to provide a kind of refresher to remind you or to let you know how the pieces look, while also giving you some sense of space as well, particularly for those people who have not had a chance to visit the exhibition yet. So with that, let me just start sharing my screen. I guess it's shared. Here we go. Let's hop to it. You know, I almost feel like giving you some complete and unadulterated silence just to let you take it all in virtually, at least for the first, say, 20 seconds or so. Voila. So just as a reminder, this is the first ever West Coast solo exhibition of Daisuke Nakano. And this has been so positively received since it opened just under 4 weeks ago. And we've been just receiving overwhelming, inexplicable amounts of inquiries and feedback as to how the exhibition experience had impacted and touched so many people's lives and struck chord with their worldview of the garden and landscape art as a whole. So much so that we thought by hosting a special artist talk program like this, it would actually give us and you the chance to literally unravel and dissect the imaginary and magical landscapes of Daisuke Nakano together from a very diverse range of perspectives today. you're looking at some of the smallest but most recent works right from Nakano Atelier in Kyoto. Amazing. These beautiful gold leaf-based paintings of white wisterias, as well as magnolias farther down the space, kind of mounted purposely facing out to the garden so that they are more susceptible to the ever-changing natural sunlight. Different visual effects, obviously, every time you look at them. You know, I just love the way the actual garden and the imaginary landscapes of Nakano are juxtaposed side by side. So the visitors, as well as myself, are really compelled to immerse ourselves and themselves in the best of both worlds. Excellent. Well, that's the end of the video walkthrough, but I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Now, you know, every time we talk about Daisuke Nakano's artistry, there is that inevitable mention and reference to the traditional Japanese painting techniques and design principles, particularly those of the Rinpa school that has been in existence since the 17th century. So I thought, what better way to open the forum today by having an expert give you a 15-minute crash course on what Rinpa stood and still stands for, to provide you all with a nice kind of jumping off point for the later conversation as well. And doing that today, for us particularly, is someone I deeply admire and respect. As a scholar and researcher of the very topic with an abundance of professional experience at multiple world-class institutions, joining us right from Washington, D.C., is the Associate Curator of Japanese Art at the Smithsonian National Museum of Asian Art, Dr. Frank Feltens, or Frank, if I may. Welcome to the program tonight, and we are so thrilled to have you here with us.
Thank you, Aki, for the great introduction, and it was lovely to see that video. I really wish I could see the exhibition in person, and I think many of us who are tuning in from the East Coast or elsewhere wish we would be in Portland right now as well. But let me go ahead and share my screen and go ahead and actually think together where the roots of much of, or the ancestry really started for the tradition that Nakano-san is working in. Nakano-san, as you all may know, he works in a tradition called Nihonga, modern Japanese style painting. But the ancestry of that tradition really goes back, as Aki mentioned, way to the 17th century, to the birth of a tradition called Rinpa, or literally the school of Korin, which is one of the members of this loose lineage of painters and artists that worked in this particular style. But the tradition didn't start with Korin per se, but with a man named Tawaraya Sota, who worked like Nakano-san in Kyoto. He lived in Kyoto and ran a so-called picture shop, an eya in Japanese. And those were, you have to imagine those being relatively humble businesses, street-side businesses with that would sell ready-made artworks, such as decorated paper of the kind that you see here, or fans or small-scale works that people would buy, either ready-made or custom-made. So this was a relatively humble business in a sense, but Sotatsu worked in this tradition and excelled in it. And you can already see in some of these works that I'm showing you today, and many of those I selected are from our own collection at the Ippodo Gallery. So this work you see here on the screen is a libretto from the No Theater, for which Sotatsu supplied the printed decor in glistening mica. So if you open this book, you have to imagine this. You can almost not see the decoration. You have to really move it and shine a light onto it in order to see the glistening imprint of these leaves, for example, or other kinds of designs. And the reason why Sotatsu became more and more influential as an artist was twofold, really. I mean, first of all, he had a very strong talent, as you can see, in creating striking works of art. But at the same time, also, he lived in Kyoto during a time that saw a lot of uncertainty and a lot of insecurity, in a sense that there was still the remnants of a civil war going on that caused many ateliers to relocate to other cities, go away from Kyoto. But Sotatsu stayed and filled the void that catered to patrons of the upper tier society in Kyoto, such as people like Honnami Koetsu, who is one of Sotatsu's main collaborators. And Koetsu was a man of culture, a poet, a calligrapher, a potter, a gentleman potter, etc., etc. And these men joined forces in so many ways among the network of Kyoto, and of course bringing in all kinds of other people as well, and created really striking works like these. So this is a hand scroll in our collection at the Freer that uses woodblock printed decor that is created in this modular shape almost, where you have the same shape of crane, for example, here on the right, imprinted in different angles and in different materials. The dark color is silver, whereas the lighter color is gold. And you can see that by imprinting these heavy pigments, you can see that the paper really stuck to the printing block in that way, and so created these surface structures where the paper sort of stuck onto the block as the artist was pulling it away. And by angling all these different blocks to get also here in the stalks of bamboo, for example, Sotatsu created one of the key components of the Rimba artistic lineage, which is really variation through repetition. By using these modular shapes that are often repetitive in their form, but by using them and by concealing their repetitiveness, by, for example, here, as I said, changing the different angles, or also in the bamboo, for example, overlaying the same pattern with others, he created variation. And in these sort of relatively easily produced paper decors was sort of the birth of that Rimba tradition that eventually then laid the foundation for Nakano-san's tradition of Nihonga. And Sotatsu was really, by filling this void of patronage or of artistic supply in Kyoto at the time, but also by having this incredible artistic prowess and this really imaginative creativity, he solicited more and more upscale and important patronage, and many temples, many aristocratic patrons solicited his works. And this screen is one of only 6 pairs of folding screens by Sotatsu that survive and are clearly attributed to him. And we are lucky to have this at the Freer. And in this kind of work, you can already see the mastery of a painter like Sotatsu, in a sense that he is presenting us with this vista of pine-clad islands on the right screen here on the top, and then a sandbank on the left screen. But he's playing with vision and perception in a way that a lot of Rimba artists would eventually also do. For example, you can see here on the right screen, the water from a distance seems to be very stylized, of course. And the closer you look, of course, you see the different lines that he used. But he didn't just use ink to create these swirling water formations, but also lines of gold pigment interspersed. So imagine these standing in a traditional Japanese home that is only lit through natural light coming in through the open shutters or through dim candles. This would have been a striking experience, much different from how you would see it today in a brightly lit gallery. But speaking of playing with vision and perception. So here in this work on the right side, you can see up here, there is a band of clouds that then connects to the left screen. If you would put them next to each other, they would connect seamlessly. And clouds like these in traditional Japanese painting would be used to create a sense of spatial depth. So this is one of the perspectival techniques used in traditional painting. But in the accompanying screen, the band of cloud is morphing into a sandbank. So something airy, something in the sky is morphing into something solid. A sandbank here that has these pine trees, stylized pine trees on them. And then with this formation here, Sotatsu is really pushing this abstraction and this play with the viewer engaging into the work and trying to figure out what is going on and what the landscape's trying to communicate. To the extreme, really, in a sense that there is this abstracted cloud formation. Or is it a cloud formation? Or is it a sandbank? Nobody knows. But what we do know is what materials it was made with. So this is, as you can see here, these areas are gold, so would have been gorgeously glistening in the traditional home. And the perimeter is done in silver pigment that is now oxidized into this brownish color. So in the original, all these darker brown areas would have been silver, and the effect must have been striking. And I just want to show you a few more close-ups of the work that really show you this tempestuous sea that is you can almost hear the crashing of the waves, although they have an almost combed appearance, but they still seem powerful enough to draw you in. And this is, to me, as somebody who's dealt with a lot with this type of aesthetic, one of the key features of its appeal. I think this play with abstraction and naturalism, sort of really creating the perfect sweet spot between the two. And Sotatsu, the other big Rinpa artist that comes after Sotatsu, Ogata Korin. And I should say that the Rinpa lineage, or it is not really a lineage, the Rinpa tradition is not one of the painting schools in the traditional sense that you think of in Japan, like the Kano, for example, that where a young offspring of a painter would train in the same tradition, and sort of there would be a bloodline either through adoption or through offspring created that continues over centuries. Rinpa wasn't like that. These painters were oftentimes not related to each other, or didn't even meet, didn't even overlap in time. Korin was born almost a decade after Sotatsu had died, so they didn't overlap. They were Korin was drawn to Sotatsu for two reasons. The biggest of them is because he had access to his works by living in Kyoto, living in an upscale family that would have collected works by Sotatsu. But also he was drawn to this type of style because it was so closely associated with Kyoto and its own identity. And then a third reason is Korin actually was, in fact, related to Sotatsu by marriage, though. So there was some kind of connection going on, but the biggest connection of the Rinpa painters is through inspiration and mutual admiration. And this work, and I don't want to take up too much time, but I just want to give you a moment to contemplate one of my favorite works by Korin, and this is actually one of his earliest screens that he made. So he had just about less than a decade before he made this work, he had started as a painter, as a latecomer in his late 30s. That wasn't usual at the time. That was pretty late. He created this stunning work of art, and he plays again with vision and perception in a way that some of these iris clusters that you see here are repeated in exactly the same way across the screen. So for example, here on the left screen, the cluster of irises down here is repeated in exactly the same way right next to it. You don't notice this immediately, and actually it wasn't commented upon in writing until 1954, if you think that this screen was probably made around the early 1700s. Who knows if people noticed it? I don't know, but for sure, nobody wanted to write about it before the 1950s, which is interesting. And just to give you another close-up of these, of the process, that gives you an approximation of the process, how these stunning works of art would have been made. And the reason why, I just want to say, the reason why the pigments are so much lighter here is because this was photographed very up close, as you can see, but with a stronger flash than in the other photography that I showed you just a slide ago. But here you can almost see the movements of Korin's brush going across the surface, and those are the kinds of pigments that Nakano-san is also still using in the same city of Kyoto 300 years later. And so this is why, one of the reasons why I wanted to show you how these glistening mineral pigments, what a kind of stunning surface they create. All of these pigments that you see here on the screen are traditional Japanese pigments, as malachite for the green and azurite for the blue, that come in a powdered form and need to be bound with animal glue in order to make them adhesive and use them as a painting tool. And but because of their mineral or origin, they do create a very luscious and crystalline luster that sparkles ever so slightly in the light. So this is one of the very appealing aspects of traditional Japanese painting, for sure. And I want to close before handing it over back to Aki with this pair of screens, which is probably the closest you can get in the Edo period, so in traditional Japan, to the modern Nihonga tradition. This is an artist by the name of Suzuki Kiitsu, who did not work in Kyoto but in Edo. And the tradition, the Rinpa tradition that was based in Edo, incorporated much more naturalism and a much more emphatic combination of these abstracted surfaces vis-a-vis emphatically naturalistic elements. So this is where the tip of modernity is already visible a little bit in the works of art. And then what is also striking and what is also translated into modern Nihonga is this pairing of gold, here the gold background, and silver. That is really something that you find much stronger in the later Edo period, and in particular among Rinpa artists, and represents a technique that is, or a use of materials that is still very much prevalent in modern Nihonga, among Nakano-san's works, for sure, as you will see later. Thank you.
Whoa, Frank. You know, I'm used to seeing some sort of forceful presentations here, but the one you just gave was so concise yet magically condensed with all relevant information for people just prior to the discussion with the artists and galleries. So I could not thank you more, honestly, for what you've done for the past 15 minutes, actually. The mere 15 minutes, we just walked through what you walked us through, 325 years of history. So thank you so much. That was a bit mouthful for you, right? But Frank, I'd appreciate if you could just remain on the screen while I invite Daisuke Nakano and Shoko Aono to the virtual panel. Thanks. Well, as I said earlier, we are very fortunate to have the Artists Representative Gallery attend this forum right from New York City. She's Shoko Aono of Ippodo Gallery. Shoko, I don't know if you're gonna be coming on anytime soon. Great, it's a tremendous honor to have you here with us. Would you like to say a few words to the crowd, to the virtual audience out there?
Thank you, Aki. Thank you, Frank. And thank you, the team, Portland Japanese Garden. It's been a privilege beyond my expectation that this exhibition could make it happen in the most beautiful garden. I was there 4 weeks ago for the opening, which regrettably we couldn't receive Daisuke and then his wife Kumiko's visit. However, I witnessed that the art and then Daisuke's work created a miracle. It's if I should describe his work, he is a painter of light. He paints light. He creates something. If I can imagine something, a paradise, I can think of that kind of a world surrounded by his paintings. And especially in this most heavy and difficult time without human contact and interactions. That was a perfect exhibition we could make together, Aki and the team, and Daisuke's wonderful paintings. The dark moment, but we now recovered from that. And then this exhibition was a perfect way to brush away those energy, that bad and difficult time. Now we are positive, optimistic for the coming time. So again, thank you for making this miracle together. And I am so privileged to be here again. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, the privilege has been all ours all along, actually. Thank you, Shoko. And of course, we would love to invite the artist to the panel. I guess needing no introduction here, though. His creations have been doing all the talking, captivating a countless number of spectators and collectors here in Poland and, of course, beyond. Mr. Nakano or Daisuke, it's nothing but a pleasure to have you here with us, joining us from Kyoto studio. Would you like to say a few words to the audience before we get into the conversation?
はい。こんにちは。ありがとうございます。本当に素晴らしい庭園とマッチしていて、美しい展覧会を開いていただけたのが、とてもほんまに感謝しています。今こういう状況なんで、なかなか現地に行けないことは残念なんですけども、やっぱりこの開催中の展覧会の情報をギャラリーの方からもいただいたりしているのが日々楽しみに、そしてまた自宅でも制作を続けております。今日も興味深いイベントに参加させていただいてありがとうございます。
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. It's my great pleasure to be here today. And I'm very excited and I'm very grateful for this opportunity to be able to present my works at this perfect, situation where my artwork just matches with the city here at the Portland Japanese Garden. It's very unfortunate that I was not able to be there in person myself. I wish I could have been, but I'm glad that I was able to participate even in this way, all the way from across the world. And thank you very much for having me on this program today. I look very much forward to being a part of it.
Great. Well, I'm kind of beginning to be cognizant of time and anxious to get the conversation rolling. So I'm just gonna throw a number of questions to each one of you actually on the panel, and we'll just see where that takes us to, okay? But of course, Daisuke, first I'd like to start with the artist himself, yourself. Kind of putting the techniques and history aside just for now, how do you think your own relationship with nature or Kyoto landscapes, both actual landscapes and cultural landscapes, may have sort of influenced your artistic approach and sensibilities over the years? This is definitely one of the most commonly asked questions by our visitors, who come to visit the exhibition, Daisuke. So they are just fascinated by your perception of nature with its flora and fauna. So if you can just, walk us through some of your seminal experiences or influences or inspiration.
そうですね。僕の住んでいる京都っていうのは日本の中でも割とかつてから文化の中心地でありましたし、で今現在も割と伝統的な職業、あるいはそれに携わる職人さんたちがたくさんおられますし、僕の同世代の職人で伝統的な仕事を守っている方もたくさんおられますんで、知り合いの中にそういうところのなんか彼らの真摯な妥協しないような仕事っぷりにはいつも姿勢にはいい刺激をいただいてます。やっぱり京都もお寺であるとか神社であるとかもたくさんあるような街なんですけども、やっぱりかつてからその日本の考え方、自然に対する考え方っていうのには、やっぱり自然は征服するんじゃなくてコン コントロールしきろうとかするんではなくって、なんか自然の中にこう人間生活っていうのがこう寄り添うような、要するになんかまあ共存していくような考え方っていうのがもともとから強く根底にあるような感覚があって、でまあ動物にも植物にも全ての自然のものの中にはやっぱり神の愛情が宿ってるっていう考え方が割と日本の思想考え方には割と深く根付いているところがあるので、やっぱりまあ僕自身もそういうところの考え方であるとか感じ方っていうのには敬意を持っているから、やっぱり自分の作品の中に様々な動物や植物を登場させてるんですけども、やっぱりそういう普段からそういう慈しみというのか、そういう季節、四季を通じて様々自然が見せてくれる姿っていうのには敬意を払って作品に取り組んでいます。やっぱそれが僕の一番根底になっている部分かなと思います。
Yes, so of course I've had the pleasure of living and growing up in this most beautiful, traditional cultural capital of Japan in Kyoto, and it's a city that's just filled with absolute wonders, traditional beauties, and being around and living in that situation and being completely immersed in that has had a huge impact on my work. And Kyoto has lots of temples and shrines where you can see sort of traditional beauty all around you all the time. But in Japan, it's one thing that has really influenced my work is our sort of cultural mindset, or our sort of mindset relating to nature and how humans interact with and live among nature. And so the idea of kind of coexisting with nature is a really important influence for a lot of my work. There are a lot of animals and plants reflected in my artwork. And in Japan, we like to say that there are gods that exist within every animal and every plant. Every living creature has a god within them. And so that's something that I tried to convey, and it really influenced my works, and not just to convey the beauty of each of these living creatures, but also to convey the spirits that live within them and our sort of mindset of coexisting with nature as well.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, again, Daisuke, it's another kind of related question that's also often asked by our spectators here in the exhibition as well, is whether there is any, say, symbolism or motifs of iconographic significance behind the plants and animals and landscape that you depict, as well as, their combination of that you've chosen for each of these different pieces in the exhibition. That's what we get asked a lot. What does peacock mean? What does wisteria mean? What does, peony mean? Do you embed any specific symbolism behind some of these motifs that you depict in your typical works?
そうですね。まあ、今回のメインにしている白藤の屏風の中に登場してくるクジャクっていうのは、シンプルに夫婦愛であるとか、あるいはこうパートナーがいてくれることの人生の大切さであるとか、豊かさっていうようなことを、意味して、オスとメスのつがいのクジャクを画面に配置したんですけども、今回のその白藤の屏風が会場に2点あると思うんですけど、見つめ合ってる方のクジャクを先に制作したんですけども、その時はまだコロナではなく制作して、で続けて2点目を描く時にこう世界が本当にコロナ禍に入ってしまって、だけど自分の温めてた構想は曲げずに白藤の2点連作で作ることは貫いたんですけども、やっぱりそっち側の画面のクジャクにはオスとメスがいるのをどういうポーズにしようかなって考えたときに、やっぱりそのコロナ禍であるとか、ちょっと世界的にものすごいダメージを受けているような中での制作だったので、そっちの方の絵はクジャクのオスとメスがこう天に向かって2匹ともいなないているような、こうさえずっているようなポーズにしたりしたのも、ある種僕の心境が反映しているような部分でもあります。あと鳥もそうなんですけど、結構僕は画面の中に蝶々を入れるんですけども、日本の方では蝶は割とちょっと宗教的な感じになるかもしれないけど、この世と世と現在と未来とのなんかつなぎ目にいるような生き物という捉え方もあったりとか、あるいはこう夢の生き物であるっていうような捉え方とかもあるので、割と 植物に合わせて様々な種類の蝶々を登場させるのは割と作品のイメージとして面白かったり、そういうシンボリックな意味もありますね。さっきも言ったようにどんな植物にもやっぱり神の愛情が宿っているもんだと考えてますし、やっぱり世界がどんな状況でもやっぱり季節が来れば間違いなくその花は咲いてくれるっていうこと自体が、僕にとってはものすごくシンボリックなことなんで、日本はありがたいことに四季に恵まれているような国ですから、やっぱ春夏秋冬といろいろ様々な姿を自然が見せてくれるのをどう僕がキャッチして作品にしていくかっていうことですね。はい。
Yes, so I do happen to use, you'll see a lot of recurring motifs within my artwork. For example, the peacock is one that shows up quite frequently. And the peacock, sort of the reason why I kind of chose this was one of the first artworks I had done. It was very symbolic to me as something that everyone around the world can recognize, and someone can sort of, understand what it is and sort of convey a meaning from it. So in that sense, it makes the artwork sort of more globally reachable to everyone. And then also the artworks that feature a lot of white wisterias in my artwork as well. And from a sort of like almost a spiritual perspective, the white wisterias kind of convey a sort of sense of spirituality in my artwork as well. And another thing that shows up quite frequently in my artwork is butterflies. But aside from, I do a lot of birds, but also I tend to do a lot of butterflies as well. And the butterflies have also a sort of spiritual aspect where they kind of symbolize the connection between the current, our now and our future. So they're sort of symbolizing making dreams appear or having our dreams come true in life. And so I thought it would be really interesting to kind of bring in this sort of spiritual aspect into my artwork as well. And like I mentioned before, within all of our living things, creatures, animals, plants, and whatnot, in Japan, we believe that there are gods residing within all of these. And so kind of bringing in not just the beauty of things that you can find from around the world, but bringing in the spirituality that each of these things represents, and to kind of have a wide variety of art of objects, animals, and plants as well. To kind of, I thought it'd be interesting to represent a lot of the different types of gods and beautiful nature that exists around us in my artwork.
Brilliant. So over to you, Frank. Of course, everyone on the panel is encouraged to ask each other questions as well. But if I may just touch on your earlier presentation of Rimpa, you very deftly, made us aware of some of Rimpa's key tenets, such as the accentuated kind of outlines, and you said repetition. The use of repetition is most kind of prevalent throughout Rimpa's school of Japanese traditional painting, also along with, I guess, simplified figures. And we know the key visual characteristics of traditional Japanese paintings as compared with the Western art of the similar era. Caravaggio, Botticelli, or Michelangelo, for example. I just want to ask your opinion as to what might have made a difference in their respective approaches, East and West, to depicting nature, people, and wildlife, for that matter. So I'm just very curious to hear what you think of some of the key differences in the way the Japanese have perceived nature that led them to develop such a distinct style of expression.
Thank you for that question. I think every culture has its own way to take the world out there and put it into a work of art. And in Japan versus, in the Western tradition, our understanding of what should make up a work of art is informed so much by the Renaissance and by these notions of realism and perspective, and being sort of able to capture the world out there almost exactly like we seem to perceive it with our eyes. And in the Japanese, it's difficult to generalize, of course, but in Japan, the approach to creating an image of something is a different one. The goals of a Japanese painter are not necessarily, unless they want to, to create a complete replica of what is out there. There are plenty of painters like Corinne, for example, who were very able to do this, but chose to create something that is, for lack of a better word, emphatically artistic. I mean, if you think about the iris screens, for example, that is a work that is so beautifully at the juncture between this artistic imagination and representational naturalism. So I think that is kind of one of the main currents that you see, at least in the Rimba tradition, if not in other parts of Japanese art as well.
Interesting. Yeah, very, very interesting. Thank you so much. Quickly over to Shoko. One of my biggest questions to you, actually, as a moderator, is dealing with contemporary and living artists. You must have one of the most difficult jobs in the world, actually, of trying to find a market for artists that's not quite found clientele abroad, let alone domestic market within Japan, for example. What drives you in general to kind of bridge with the world, the lost or disappearing artisanship or craftsmanship of Japan? How did you decide to take Daisuke Nakano to the global stage by hosting an exhibition in New York soon after you met him just a few years ago? So I was really curious to know some of your kind of drive, as well as the specific case of dealing with Daisuke Nakano.
Wow, this is a big question. Thank you. So thank you. I just I'm still figuring out what is my role being in New York and promoting and fostering and presenting a Japanese living artist. We chose to not working with antiques and old masters, because our mission is to live with the artists, support them, and also we are the one that we create the culture today. So we love, of course, the old masters, and then we respect, but at the same time our mission is to bring out that what's the art today, and then how we can pass on to the next generation. And as for well, since I was little, I'm always interested in human being. I'm always curious why we are born, why I'm here, why I have 2 eyes, why I have 10 fingers. I'm always asking, and my mother always said, Shoko, you were born. Don't ask. You were just born. You live with it, and then just don't ask. So, but since then, still now, my curiosity and my kind of a direction of my life itself is to figure out and then seek why human makes art, why we create something beautiful or something so difficult or something universally fascinating. And then when I saw Daisuke Nakano's paintings in his small studio in Kyoto, I immediately got drawn into his world of work. He utilizes the traditional pigments, traditional techniques, mediums. However, this is the truly living artist now, which is, to me, something powerful, because his work can be, saying, okay, this is Nihonga, traditional painting, but it's beyond. To me, it's a Reiwa era's artist, the contemporary artist, which is the overpowering, the composition and the exhaustive lines and the faithful details and living colors. He creates his own colors every day. He makes the deer's glue into the medium every single morning. Think about it. Today, we are living in a digital world. We have computer. We can have iPhone to scanning everything. Why he does that? And so, to me, this is my passion. and then inspiration. Being a gallerist, working with those artists is a tremendous honor and huge means to my life. So yeah, I should stop here. I can be very passionate.
I feel you, definitely.
Yeah.
So if I may go back to Daisuke just briefly, you know, as someone who's seemingly, definitely kind of going back to what Shoko was alluding to earlier, but as someone who's seemingly carrying the torch for the, you know, centuries-old art that Frank just walked us through, this centuries-old art that you're trying to carry the torch for and its principles, I'd like to know how conscious you are of, you know, preserving the tradition as opposed to pushing the envelope for the sake of it for the art form. Are there any kind of conscious efforts on your part to either preserve what Rinpa has established and stands for still, or is Rinpa just one of your artistic references and just means an end in a way, rather than what you aspire to revolve around? So I just want to, see how you see yourself kind of, you know, in relation to what has been happening over the past 350 years.
まあ、そうですね。やっぱまあリンパはじめそういう日本の様式美の中ではすごく重要なものの一つではあるとは思うんですけども、まあ多分僕はタイプ的に何でしょう。今まで全くこう見たこともないような、もうガラッと変えるようなことができるタイプでは僕が多分なくって、多分その伝統とかを重んじるというか、やっぱり当然日本の美術はものすごく長い歴史に育まれてきてますんで、やっぱりそれらからつながった今日っていうような、今の作品っていうような発想の仕方を多分僕は続けると思いますし、やっぱりそこに何か自分の中で自分が決めた使命感みたいなものを感じるというか、そういうことをしたいという、やっぱり衝動っていうか湧きますんで、まあそこには理由っていうのはあんまりないんですけども、でもあんまりやっぱりその伝統的な日本の美術が生み出してきた美しさというものを継承しつつ自分なりの作品を作っていこうとする中で、やっぱりかつてできる限り、かつての日本画が使ってきた素材であるとか、まあ技法とかは参考にしつつ、まあちょっと今日の現代人の目にも、印象に残るような技法っていうものは自分なりにも模索してますし、まあ、さっき翔子さんもおっしゃられたみたいに、やっぱり今はもうものすごくデジタルの時代が進んでいって、いろいろ映像とか迫力のあるものに、現代人の目は慣れてしまってる部分もあって、まあ、それに加えて、まあ僕もなんでしょう、一人で手で描いていく作業をする上で、そういった現代人の目にも印象に残ったり、手で描くからこそ人の心に届く何かがあるんじゃないかとか、まあそれは日々模索しながらやってるようなところですけどね。
Yes, so definitely it's part of my mission is to, keep retaining part of the tradition of the Japanese history that we've been using, and there's so much, as you mentioned, 350 years of tradition and beauty that has been conveyed throughout Japanese various art projects, and that's something that, of course, that I would like to, as I'm going through my artwork, to keep in mind and to be able to continue to convey that sort of beauty to everyone, and preserve that beauty within my artwork as well. And it's my mission is as much as possible to continue on, for example, using the traditional, referencing the traditional art techniques, and also using traditional materials in my artwork, and more so than just exactly copying or exactly carrying on the tradition as it has been. I want to make an artwork that is sort of like connecting the past with the sort of future. I want to make some artwork that is going to remain impressionable in the eyes of the modern person. So it has, like as you mentioned, using the particular types of colors and trying to manipulate the light within my artwork, I think will make a bigger impression amongst the modern viewer, and just be a really impressive sort of look. So there's a sort of fine balance there between preserving the traditional techniques and the traditional materials, but then also bringing my own sort of style into it to kind of connect it with the modern times.
Brilliant. Okay. Yeah, being very mindful and conscious about time as well. But Frank, do you have any follow-up questions, or perhaps differently angled question for the artist?
In a way, I do. But I also want to share an anecdote with our audience today of first seeing Nakano-san's works at Shoko-san's gallery. I remember, when was it? 2018.
2000, actually 19.
19. Okay.
Or 18. Yeah, we lost the sense of time, but it was Asia Week in March.
That's right. Yeah, it was Asia Week, and we were at a reception, one of those receptions that happened at Asia Week, and Shoko said, "Well, come, I want to show you something." And that was actually the first time I visited your gallery, and then we entered this space, and it was almost not quite candlelit, but almost, and it was just absolutely striking. And speaking about pausing, and speaking about actually being brave enough to engage with the work of art, which people don't do as much as we should anymore these days, where we are so flooded with images. We need to find the time to actually sit down and pause and really force ourselves to listen to the work in front of us. And I found that experience to be one of those moments that was really impactful to me personally, as somebody who studies the traditional side of Japanese art, to be confronted with the possibilities really of contemporary Japanese painting as they are embodied in Nakano-san's work. And we spent a lot of time just engaging with the works, and this is the kind of moment that I would wish for many of our listeners to do when they come to your museum in Portland.
Thank you.
So Frank, I have a question about you as a scholar and expert of those old masters and historical paintings, and how did you get the impression of, what is your first impression on Daisuke Nakano's work, particularly do you have any feelings over there?
Sure. I mean, from my eyes, always try to immediately scan things for traditional elements, and of course, I find them in Nakano-san's work in a way that he uses pigments and he uses materials. But then, he moves away from that tradition and creates something that is, as you mentioned, emphatically contemporary, I think, in so many ways. And I was seeing the works in the flesh made me captured me and drew me in, and I was absorbed by the detail and the kind of experience that you would wish to have when you are going to a museum and you are drawn into the work, and you are basically, encouraged not by somebody next to you, but by the piece of art itself to look deeper and to engage with it. And I found that to be a really, rewarding experience. Yeah.
Well, excellent. In terms of reactions, though, this is kind of back to the artist side himself. While, by the way, we would open up to the floor as well, soliciting any questions and comments. And there are some comments, singing praises for the artist. Someone such as Mariana, thank you so much for your beautiful comment. Lynn also asking, how long does it take to, for the artist to create his masterpieces? That's all kind of included in the video walkthrough of the artist studio, actually, that was supplied to all of these restaurants for this program, actually. So you can always go back to the recorded footage for your information. But just to quickly answer your question, it does apparently it takes about a year and a half for the larger pieces, pure blue 14 screens, and of course less time. But Nakano-san, if I could speak on your behalf, you work on multiple pieces simultaneously. So I guess you don't get bored either, but you keep working on different motifs and different compositions, different pigments, different styles. So I guess that kind of answers your question. But from me to the artist very quickly is in terms of reactions and kind of responses from different types of audience out there, because you've attended presumably opening receptions and ceremonies in different countries. Say between the United States and Japan, in terms of spectators' reaction to your art pieces, do you have anything that you could share with us in terms of what you've observed over the past years? Any differences in the reaction?
そうですね。やっぱり日本での発表の時も、様々な意見をいただけて、嬉しいんですけど、やっぱちょっと日本の中で日本の美術を日本人が見てるっていうだけになると、どうしても見方であるとか、答えであるとかが割とちょっと固定化してしまってる面も一面としてはあって、だからやっぱ同じような質問が来るし、同じような答えが来るしっていうのが、やっぱりちょっととどまってしまう部分もあるんですけど、逆にやっぱりこういう、海外に作品を運ばせていただいて、普段からあんまり日本画っていうものをまだ見られてない方に、見ていただくっていうのも、またちょっと遠慮のないような、そういう、興味深い意見がもらえることが多いんじゃないかなって僕自身も感じてるので、やっぱり日本国内での発表と、海外での発表とっていうのを、今後もちょっと両立させて、制作活動をしていけたらいいなと思ってるんですけども。で、そういう中で、でも海外の方で、なんでしょう、生い立ちであるとか、その国の風土であるとか、文化であるとかが、それぞれ全く違うような国に、その作品を持っていっても、なんかその作品の中に含めてる何かが、どの国の方とも共通して、なんか認識できるような部分って要素っていうのが多分なんか美術の中にはあるんじゃないかなと思ってるので、はい、そういうような普遍性みたいなところでつながれたら最も嬉しいかなと考えてます。
Yes, and even amongst, Japanese spectators, the sort of reaction to my artwork varies a little bit, but it does tend to seem that amongst Japanese spectators who view my work, that they tend to get the same sort of questions with the same sort of answers elicited from those. But when you go overseas, there are many people who have never experienced, never been exposed to Japanese, artwork, Nihonga style artwork. So a lot of people have just extreme deep interest in the artwork and in my works in particular, which I'm very grateful for. And I would be happy to be able to continue to show my artwork more places around the world, because I imagine that each country has their own unique reaction fueled by each country's unique culture and unique mindset that kind of fuels it. But I think that there are sort of consistent reactions amongst, no matter where you are in any country as well. So I would like to be able to share my artwork around the world more, so I could kind of be able to express that more in the future as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, I've got just a couple more questions before we go over to the closing kind of remarks for each panel, but by each panel. But one is about catalogs and books. So that's for you, the gallerist Shoko Aono. And the other one is about giving the kind of young people advice in terms of how to kind of, kickstart their artistic career. Do you have an apprentice in your studio? So it's about kind of fostering the next generation of artists or like-minded artists. So one question for you, Shoko, the other one for Daisuke. Shoko, basically.
So it's about the catalog?
Mm-hmm. Are there plans to publish any kind of catalog, like comprehensive list of his works, so people can see the progress?
That should be a really a beautiful book, but I would like to wait probably 10 more years, because Daisuke only produces very small amount of paintings per year.
Mm-hmm.
And if we would like to have somehow rich book, I would like to really continue this, and then I would like to see in 10 years. And then this way we have great paintings, and yes, yeah, it's gonna be my dream book for sure.
Excellent. I'm reserving one already.
Okay.
Excellent. So Daisuke, the other question about fostering next generation, any advice, or do you actually have an apprentice working under you right now?
いや、まあ今のところまだ弟子っていうのはないですね。はい。まあ、ちょっと前まで自宅で少人数制で絵画教室を開いたりして、大人とか子供の方とかにスケッチの描き方とかも教えてたこともあるんですけど、やっぱりコロナ禍になってしまってから、やっぱりその教室も開けてないような感じですね。でもやっぱりね、今後、まあ、そういうちょっと日本美術に強く傾倒しているような若者と知り合えたら、やっぱりそういう美術に対する考え方であるとか、日本画の技法であるとかは、やっぱり教えていけたらなと思います。
Yes, I don't particularly have an apprentice per se at the current moment, but I have had some experiences, sharing my artwork or sort of general art techniques, for example, teaching sketching to children and things like that. But definitely there's something that I would love to be able to hold, perhaps like classes or some sort of educational opportunity in the future to be able to share my, this beautiful technique with everyone else. I would, of course, love to be able to continue on the succession of Japanese Nihonga style and Nippa style in the future as well. So that's something that is certainly on, potential for the future.
Wow, thank you. And oh my word, I mean, it's been just so much fun and time flies. We are definitely almost coming down on the home stretch right now. So I'd like to give each one of you time for any final thoughts and comments before we close the program. Really sorry that we didn't get through all of the questions. We hope to be able to answer these even after the program. So we send you some text. But I can tell you right now that this garden really does take social justice, social issues, including climate change, very, very seriously. Part of our I guess, raison d'etre, if you like, is really because of the environment that we try to protect through the teaching of the not just Zen, but the garden itself. So it is what it is for us. Okay. And Shoko, would you like to go first in terms of final thoughts or comments before we close?
Thank you for this opportunity again, and this painting exhibition of Daisuke Nakano in Portland Japanese Garden means amazing for my work and also for the artist and for our supporters, because as Daisuke mentioned, and then Frank already lectured us, we believe that in every single creatures and nature, gods and spirits are residing. And what Portland Japanese Garden has been doing and keep committing in this most difficult time, it is something I truly admire. It's nature, it's not artificial work like artwork, like ceramics or painting or so. The garden is about the nature. It's beyond us, but you create such garden in humanity way, and then it provides the beauty and fabulous hopes in this time. And then working with you, Portland Japanese Garden, and then bringing my favorite Daisuke Nakano paintings, it's again dream come true. So thank you so much. And then the show is until July 18. So you have more time. So please come back. And then for the people who hasn't come yet, please go now.
Thank you. Frank?
Thank you.
Yeah, I also want to thank everybody who joined us today. And also thank you so much to you, Aki, Shoko, and Daisuke for this wonderful conversation. I think Here it is 9:30 in the evening, and it's a beautiful time to end the day with this type of conversation and with this type of art. And I'm going to end the day by imagining myself walking through Portland Japanese garden and seeing Daisuke-san's works in the natural light. And I think, you can have a no better experience of any work of art, be it Japanese, be it traditional or contemporary, than to see it in the light or in the natural light. And it's just changing your experience. And I admire you that you were able to make that happen in Portland. So I wish I could go. I hope everybody who's listening in can. And thank you.
Thank you so much. Last but certainly not least, Daisuke.
Thanks. 本当に今日もとても興味深いイベントで参加させていただきましてありがとうございました。美しい庭園の中での展示で僕の作品を見る前とそして見た後とでほんの少しでも心が豊かになってもらえたらこれ以上僕にとって嬉しいことはないと思います。今月の7月18日まで開催いただいてますので、もしよかったらごご覧いただければなと思います。
Thank you so much. Brilliant. I just gotta say, this has been nothing but a terrific thought journey that gave us many insights into not just Daisuke's artistic processes and posture, but also how that really fits into the larger continuum of the Japanese traditional painting. The tradition as informed by the way the Japanese people have embraced nature and human emotion, I think. The bottom line, I can't believe either that the show is ending in 10 days. And I would definitely encourage as many of you as possible to come see the show in person and see the garden, see how the garden has actually become an integral part of those imaginary landscapes, only to be enhanced by your own imagination. So I just want to quickly thank all of our guests today, Dr. Frank Feltens, Ms. Shoko Aono, naturally, most especially to Daisuke Nakano, the artist, and of course, his amazing wife, Kumiko. I don't know if she is right next to the artist. Yeah. And of course, a quick thank you and kudos from me to our interpreter, Leah. I don't know if she can be viewable, who's gonna be off to Washington, DC for her graduate studies apparently very soon. Thank you, Leah. If you can hear me, you've been nothing but amazing, honestly, for the past 90 minutes. I know we've gone over the time limit. Sorry about this. And thank you, of course, to all of you, the viewers, for spending time, precious time with us. Your support for the garden and institute are always most appreciated. And I would definitely feel remiss if I actually didn't encourage you to consider becoming a member if you aren't already. That will help us go just that much further in a critical mission of bridging the landscape art with the every other art form there. So thank you so very much once again and see you soon, okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.